Welcome to My Favorite CX, a podcast that celebrates exceptional customer experiences. To listen to today's, please choose from one of the following options.
Welcome to My Favorite Customer Experience, a podcast where we talk about people's favorite recent customer experiences and also customer experience from their perspective. I'm Chris Holt from Holt CX Consultancy here in the UK. I'm joined by Hannah Hickinbotham from the Full of Beans podcast. Hannah, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's so nice to see you.
We paused a little bit there because there's probably about 2 minutes of outtakes of me getting your name wrong, having promised to try and not get your name wrong. Having joked that when we used to network together, everyone got your name wrong all the time.
Yeah.
So, Hannah, you're a social media mentor. You provide mental health professionals with the ability to have confidence and manage their online presence, although you do it for more than just mental health professionals. And you also host the Full of Beans podcast, which is an evidence-based eating disorder awareness podcast. And I say you recently spoke at Parliament about your experiences, but that was a couple of months ago because we were due to record this a little while back. That's not everything you do, Hannah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. I have to say I absolutely love it when people introduce me. I went to a networking thing last week and going around the room because in the classic Hannah style, I have quite a diversity of things that I do, and some of them some people know about, other people know about. So when I hear how people introduce me, it's always very nice. But I think you covered most things there. So my kind of day job, kind of the bread and butter, what I do is digital marketing, helping mental health professionals with their online presence. So that can be helping people on social media. It can also be helping with people's websites, so things like blog writing, and then also email marketing. I also do a lot of kind of resource design as well, so working with mental health companies. Maybe they're creating a program or a package for their clients, and they have the knowledge. I just make it look pretty, which is really interesting, and I really enjoy it because it means that I get to learn so much about the different disciplines within mental health. And then I guess my passion project, which is the thing I wish I could do day in, day out, and I'm hopefully moving closer to being able to do that, is the Full of Beans podcast. So I've done that for 5 years now, which was born out of my own lived experience of having an eating disorder and feeling very misunderstood, not being able to get the support that I wanted or needed, frankly. And the more that I spoke to people, because I did a master's in eating disorders, I realised that that wasn't just me. So I thought, okay, how can I use my absolute love of chatting and making friends with people and building connections for a positive? And a podcast felt like the perfect way to do that. So yeah, I started the podcast, and to be honest with you, I think it's been probably the best decision that I've ever made in terms of starting it. The connections that I've developed, the research I've been involved with, and then how it's helped my own business has just been incredible. And as you mentioned, I went to Parliament a few months ago, but I'm involved in a lot of advocacy work for eating disorders. Unfortunately, there's not the funding or resources that we need for support. And so a few weeks ago, I went to the Dump the Scales March, which was through London, and it was basically a very peaceful march through London to speak about why we needed to have more funding for eating disorders. And it was a very nice experience in terms of, I stood there listening to the talks and looking around and lots of familiar faces, and then I just had this moment of thinking, I really wish that I was connected to these people in a way that wasn't that we're advocating for better treatment, because I don't really know of many illnesses where you have to be like marching on the street to advocate for care. But so eating disorder treatment advocacy is really, really important to me. And just mental health in general, to be honest, is something I'm so passionate about speaking about.
I think I don't try and relate everything we talk about back to customer experience, but knowing in my personal life, for example, where my wife has had previous guest of a show, in fact, has had health issues, and yeah, we've had to get involved in marches or advocacy, and healthcare is amazing in the UK, especially if it's urgent need urgent needs, and but when it's something that's mental health, or when it's something eating disorders, or as menopause, for example, there's not the support there. And from a customer experience perspective, it can be quite difficult. And you have to make a lot of noise to make anything happen, or you have to put your money where your mouth is and pay for a premium service.
Yeah. And even then, sometimes, even if you do pay for a premium service, you're not met with a timely response. You're not maybe met with the understanding or the support or the compassion that you would maybe expect. And as you were saying that, then I was thinking, I've never really thought about the NHS as, being a patient, as being a customer experience. But I suppose in a way it really is. And then my head was like, well, you're getting it for free, so you should just be happy. But actually, there are a lot of things within health that you do pay for. And I think going to the doctor realistically is a customer experience. And I know that at the beginning of this week, I had a very different experience at the doctor's than I've ever had before, and it completely changed my outlook on how I felt I was being treated. So definitely, it all aligns for sure.
And just because something is free doesn't mean the experience can't be exceptional.
Yeah.
Often it is seen as a reason to not provide an exceptional service. To your point, it's free, so deal with it. But actually, I'm hoping by visit to the doctor is a positive experience and change your outlook in that regard. But there's no reason why standard services, free services, shouldn't provide exceptional experiences and shouldn't be easy to deal with. There are things that any business, any service can do to still address that customer experience. Making appointments easy, making video appointments easy as well, and things, or making in person also attainable. Unfortunately, some of our local services, it can be quite hard to see someone. But I also completely get doing triage. But then I look at, say, my health insurance provider, and I know I can get a GP on an app quite quickly. So yeah, there's swings and roundabouts. There's definitely no reason with any free service to still not provide an exceptional experience.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And I think, even if it is free, I guess it's different in a sense of, when you're thinking about the NHS, but I think sometimes if a service is free and then there's the potential of a paid service down the line, actually, if you're providing a free service and that it's absolutely exceptional, I'm way more likely to go back for that paid service. It's almost a way to hook me in to then, have a paid service down the line. Whereas if it's rubbish, there's no way I'm going back. So, you've wasted your time by giving me a free service, and also I'm never coming back. Whereas if you go the extra mile on that free service, you kind of got me hooked in.
Yeah, if you only provide a service based on the level of revenue you're driving at that moment, then you never know what you're potentially closing the door on. Absolutely. What excites you, obviously, from the world of customer experience, from the way you see the world with everything you're involved in? What excites you with what you're seeing as a customer at the moment?
Ooh. I think, and sorry for the really long pause there, for me and the world that I'm involved in, I think the thing that's exciting me the most at the moment is, which is also terrifying me, the access to the whole entire world. So if you think about the mental health space, when a couple of years ago, if I was looking for a therapist or I was looking for a healthcare professional, I would probably be looking in Cambridge. I know that when I went for therapy myself, I was like, okay, where do I get a therapist in Cambridge? Now we have access to the entire world. So you can have somebody, I am part of a networking group for women in mental health, and there's professionals globally within that group chat. And it's fantastic because it means that people can go on there, they can ask, does anyone work with clients in South Africa? Is anyone working with clients in France? Is anyone working with clients in China? It's all over the place. I think that's what both excites me and terrifies me, is that we literally have global access to people now. So it means that you don't necessarily have to, if you can afford to pay for healthcare, you don't necessarily have to be affected by the postcode lottery. You can kind of go all around. And I mean, it's really funny. My therapist that I worked with actually is in Brighton. And a couple of weeks ago was the first time we ever met in person because all of the therapy was done online. And I think for me, especially within eating disorder treatment, online therapy is a fantastic way to have treatment because you're doing it in the safe space of your own home. So yeah, I think the global access just really, really changes the dynamic of things. It does also terrify me because I think there's a funny thing of how we've gone from humans being in tiny little communities and only knowing of what exists in our tiny little community to now having access to the entire global population, which means that can often be very difficult, if you're driven by things like comparison. It can kind of take away the joy or different things within you because you're thinking, oh, well, I've got the potential of the whole world, so my expectations are so much bigger. So I think that aspect scares me, but ultimately it's very cool to know that you could connect with somebody on the other side of the world and they can help you in that way.
I think global reach is fantastic and very enabling. I think of like when I was growing up, your news was your local news and your national news, and something had to be pretty big to get onto the national news. But now anything is a story anywhere. And it's the same with connectivity with, your expert can be anywhere, which in theory means you open up the pool of, again, to your point, if you've got the resources, you could get the best person. They just happen to be on the west coast of the US, for example. They could be in Australia. My therapist, he's UK based, but we've had chats when he's been in Asia, when he's been in Colombia, when he's been wherever, and we just find, we like, right, time zone wise, this is what I'm doing. Does this work? And sometimes it'll be earlier, sometimes it'll be later, sometimes he works UK hours. And I think that's the thing now with people can work from anywhere and they can work on whatever time zone they like. So, I've said, if I'm supporting something in the US, for example, I'll work a US day and try not to then work my morning, because then I end up working a UK US day, which I've done in the past and isn't very sustainable. The possibilities are endless now.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, particularly for me in terms of wanting to know about research that's happening all over the world. I think that, one thing that maybe happened before was people were working on the same thing because they couldn't share that research. But now we can collaborate together with different, with people from different sides of the globe. But then also, I think, as you say, it has its negatives because which I suppose is a positive as well, in the fact of about what's happening in the entire world, which can be great because you become very more aware, and I think that people's values and what people stand for can really grow because they can see different things that are happening in different countries, but that also can be quite overwhelming when particularly when you think about at the moment everything that's happening. It's like a lot for my little brain to take, and sometimes I just need to take a step back.
I think if you think about global horizons and things, like, again, going back to my youth, was really into my music, but it was still quite centric to what was around. And when our eldest, the aforementioned employee number 2, now at Holt CX, when he was getting into music in his teens, he was like, "Oh, have you heard of these guys?" And I'm like, I can't even remember the name of the band, but I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, they were really big in 1984." And I was like, "Well, one, I wasn't very big in 1984, and two, and then you look at it and it's like they were niche on like a part of America, and it's like that didn't work. There was like one record shop in like the locality which would get imports in, but other than that, it was what's in the UK unless you really look for it. And that global horizon means, whether it's expertise, whether it's culture, whether it's news, everything is accessible now.
Yeah, which I think is incredible. It made me giggle when you said about music, because I think we went from kind of, everything was in the UK because that's what we had access to. And then there was maybe a period of 20 years, I want to say, where, like YouTube comes up and you've got people streaming music there. And then things like Spotify. Now it's just TikTok. And I hate it. I really hate it. Like at my dance class, every song that we do is one that's gone viral on TikTok. And I'm like, oh, it's really annoying because I actually quite like this music. But also, like, I want to go back to those days where I was discovering music myself through YouTube and Spotify, not because it's gone viral on TikTok.
I guess it's just generational shift, isn't it? Because it used to be, when I was growing up, it was new music on the radio. So it's just the destination of the new music has changed. I mean, when I started going to gigs, I really got into the support acts.
Yes.
And now I'm at an age where I just don't show up for the support acts, and I feel really bad about it and guilty afterwards. But I've also had, generally talk about the good experiences here, but I've generally had some bad experiences of really bad support acts as well.
Yeah.
So I've got older and felt my time was more important.
I mean, I used to totally be on your side, and then my partner, he'd never been to a gig before, and I took him to his first gig, and he was like, we've got to get there for the support act. And I was like, no, they're always rubbish. We're not doing that. But he's really opened my eyes. And to be fair on him, we went to see Jerry Cinnamon, and Jerry Cinnamon had the Blossoms supporting him, and they were at Glastonbury. So you never know where people are going to go.
I can big league you on that one. So an OK Go gig many years ago, you might remember them from a Treadmill song. If not, I will put that link in the show notes. They were supported in a pretty small venue years ago in London by a young lad called Ed Sheeran.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
He was interesting.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have predicted where he's ended up, but
No.
interesting to see someone way before they start.
Mm-hmm.
We have completely deviated from customer experience and just talked about how the world is very global now and how it's really interesting. So what we'll do is we'll take a short pause. We'll put our listeners and viewers on hold, and we'll come back and we'll talk about one of your favorite customer experiences.
Your call is important to us. Please hold, and you will be connected to your next favorite customer experience shortly.
Welcome back to my favorite customer experience. I am joined by Hannah Hickinbotham of the Full of Beans podcast. 2 out of 2 now on this recording for getting your name right. We were talking about how the world for a customer has got a lot smaller now and a lot more accessible. And I thought that might be a nice tie-in to talk about maybe a favorite customer experience for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it does actually tie in really well to customer experience, because one thing I'll say before I go into my experience is I think because everything is so global now and a lot of things are done digitally, when we actually have in-person experiences and they're good experiences, I don't know whether it's just me because I'm self-employed and I don't get out to speak to many people, but that makes my day. And I think that, maybe before, when everything was in person, potentially they didn't stand out as much, whereas now when you get a good customer experience, it's like, oh my god, wow, this is really great. And the experience I'm going to explain, I think what made it even better was because of the not so great experiences I've had in the past. But my favorite experience, and it's not my favorite in my whole life, but it was a recent one, so it feels timely. I went to the sexual health clinic on Monday, and I have an implant. And so if anyone doesn't know what an implant is, it's like a form of contraception. So it's progesterone only form of contraception. The progesterone only bit I said because it's important for later and you can have this for 3 years. So 3 years in March was the time that I needed to get it redone. So very unlike me, I contacted my doctor in November, which is very ahead of schedule, very not like me, to say I need to get this implant sorted. And then in December, I then moved house, so I changed doctors. When I contacted them in November, they said that they had a massive backlog still from COVID, and so I was put on a waiting list. Then I moved, and again, very unlike me, contacted my new doctor to say, okay, my implant is expiring in March, so I need to get it redone before then. And they put me on a waiting list. I didn't hear anything. March rolled around, still didn't hear anything. And then it just became sort of one of those things in my head that there were so many barriers of entry. If anyone's not realised already from what I've been saying, I have ADHD. So barriers of entry are not my friend. So things like booking a doctor's appointment can often feel like climbing Mount Everest. So the fact that I attempted to do it twice and still not been able to get one was not great. So I then rung the doctors myself, and they said, this was in June, said, I'm really sorry, but you're still on the waiting list. So they recommended that I ring one of the clinics in Cambridge, which is Lime Tree Clinic. And I literally rung them, was that probably the end of June, let's say, was booked in for the next week, was sent a text with my appointment details. The day before my appointment, I got another text to say, just a reminder of your appointment. Also, just to let you know, there's a lot of roadworks going on in Cambridge at the moment, so please make sure you leave a bit of extra time. I then unfortunately got a cancellation because they didn't have enough doctors. I'm not mad about it at all. They booked me in for the next week. I got the same text message to remind me the day before. So pre-appointment was absolutely fantastic, and it got me in really quickly. And then when I had the appointment, went along to the appointment, was welcomed into the waiting room. And normally when I go to the doctors, I don't know whether it's just me, but I often feel like I'm a human being and the doctor is a robot. There's not normally great people skills. It's not been something I've had experience of. And this doctor just completely put me at ease instantly. She explained she needed to ask me a few questions, but she was really kind of calm with the way that she asked the questions, rather than me feeling like I needed to, I was, being assessed or kind of, being put in prison or something, which is often how I feel when I go to the doctors. And obviously with something like having the implant as well, I had a lot of questions in terms of future fertility and things like that. And she was so knowledgeable. She, no question felt like a burden. I felt like I could ask as many questions as possible. She did also then, when I was on the doctor's bed, she then put the chair up, she pressed the button, and she broke the trolley that had all of her equipment in. And obviously that wasn't ideal. I'm not saying that everyone needs to break their trolley, but it just normalized the situation so much, because I was quite anxious. And then also because of having ADHD, I've been reading a lot about hormones and contraception and the impact that can have on ADHD. And so I was asking her, is there any research around this, with it being progesterone only? Is it real? Is it like a biosynthetic form of progesterone, or is it a synthetic form? And she just was fantastic. And she gave me so much information, so much knowledge. She was chatting to me the whole way through. And then at the end gave me loads of tips for the future, and just in general it was unlike any other experience I've had with a doctor, and so from start to finish it was just seamless, which for me was really, really helpful.
And there's a few things to break down there. So if we think, they've got the technology experience right ahead of time. The in-person experience was great, and if you combine all of that, it's given you a great, you had essentially booking anxiety from November onwards of, am I on the list? Am I not on the list? You then got the advice. Now, maybe your doctors could have given that advice sooner. And maybe that's something to feed back to your surgery, for example, now of well, if you've got a waiting list, actually this experience was really good. So almost the moment you can't do that, because you've got that anxiety as well of you want to get this replaced. You don't, there's a reason why you're on the contraception after all.
I
So
don't want
you
a
don't
baby
want a gap. Exactly.
anymore.
So if we can avoid that gap by right, there's a 3-month waiting list. If we can't get you booked in, let's move you across to the clinic instead. But just the experience you had of the outbound messages, and there's reasons why sending outbound messages are great, because it makes sure if you've booked that 3 months in advance, it's making sure ahead of time. But also there's that the reason why there are waiting lists is because people don't show. So actually it's the message, and hopefully it wasn't a one-way message. Hopefully it was a two-way, so you could confirm that you're still attending. And then even on the day, just make sure. And then the roadworks. So then they're already telling you, actually, if it normally takes you 15 minutes, it might take you 30. So they're trying to then keep all of their appointments timely and making sure everything works. And it sounds like, okay, you had a cancellation, but they set expectations and they resolved everything and they made everything easy. So nothing was high effort by the sounds of it. Everything was easy and you didn't have to think about it, which, as you said, with ADHD, the more you have to think about, the harder it is.
Yeah. And I think for me, and this may be me overanalyzing the situation, but I just felt like they really cared, because they were sending me the message to say, don't forget your appointment, because I'm a forgetful person. I really appreciated that. And then with there's road work, so come a little bit earlier. It was like, time blindness is also something I struggle with. I know that those things were not specifically done for me, but they just made me feel very seen. They made me feel very kind of validated. But in caring, in making it out that those text messages were caring for me, because that's what I felt, it was actually, as you say, it was helping them as well, because I was then 10 minutes early, which meant that they then didn't have a backlog of people behind me. So absolutely, I think that, by taking those little extra steps, you give great customer service to somebody, but it also protects your back as well and means that you're not wasting your time.
I think as well, when you send a message, just by making it more human, making it more, don't forget, by the way, instead of appointment here, if not attending, text stop, and it's all in caps, and it reads like your angry grandfather's written it or something like that. Actually here it's like, it's only a slight change of tone, but it already gives that suggestion of care. And then the professional you saw, well, one, you felt at ease in the clinic because you already felt cared for. And then the professional you saw was top notch. They didn't feel that time pressure, which, I know there's basically a 7-minute timer whenever I go to the doctors of that's when they need to flip and get through to the next person. And, it's horrible for them. It can't be easy. You can't assess anything. And you have a big sign up saying you're only here to discuss the one thing that's wrong with you, not the other 10 things. It's like, I don't think anyone's probably signed up for that when they went to medical school.
No.
They gave your person even if there was a time pressure, they gave them enough where they could still deliver an excellent service.
Yeah. And I think, just going back to your point about what you said about the text messages not reading like your angry grandpa, I think that because it felt like somebody had typed out a text to me to be like, oh, by the way, Hannah, don't just let you know there's traffic. There's so much AI generated content nowadays, and I'm totally for it, don't get me wrong. Like, I use ChatGPT every day. It helps me so much to think about how to formulate my tasks. I help it with reviewing materials that I've created and stuff like that. But when you're constantly reading things, you're on social media and everybody's just written their posts and it's all AI generated, it's so refreshing to see an actual human having written something, and just little grammatical errors or things like that. Sometimes I'm like, thank you for, even if you put that in on purpose to clearly show this was not AI generated. I think we've had so much AI that it's sometimes refreshing to have that people to people contact as well. And as I say, I'm totally for AI. It helps me in so many ways, but I still think there's a place for that person to person communication, which is then why I think, having that appointment with the doctor where I felt as you said, just not rushed. There was so much time to ask questions and there was that space. And I think that's probably because it wasn't a GP appointment, it was a sexual health appointment. That's probably where that difference comes. But I mean, one of my closest friends, she's a GP, and every time I see her, she says how burnt out she is because she's literally, when they first kind of go and train to be a GP when they've done their medical school, I think they start with they go 25 minutes and then it goes down to 14 and then it goes down to 7. And then you have to write the notes out for that patient as well. And there's no wonder that patients aren't getting the support that they want or the treatment that they necessarily need. And it's not that the doctors don't care, it's that there's literally not enough time. So I think, as you said, because I had the time to ask all of those questions, it also made sure that I was making the right decision. Because I'm sure a lot of people might turn up and, potentially 3 years is a long time. And yes, you can have it removed, but, you don't want to be having it removed if you've only just have it put in. So it did really, I felt very cared for, and there was a lot of compassion for the decision that I was making, which I think, there needs to be that, especially when it comes to healthcare.
And I normally ask people how did it make you feel, and you just said they're cared for. And that's ultimately, when you're in any medical situation, anything that can help reduce your anxiety and make things easier and more palatable just makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think often when we're going into a medical setting, it's normally because something's not right or that we want support with something. And so, as you said, that can bring up so much anxiety. And, whether it's that you've got a rash on your arm or, you've been feeling quite low the past few months or what have you, it's going to be causing some underlying anxiety. So then to be told, come on, rush, you've not got long enough to talk about this, to then just kind of sit there and, be able to explain what's going on, to be able to ask questions. I think actually, whilst they're trying to save time by having those time slots, it probably ends up people needing so much more time because they're not able to ask those questions, which then leads to other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think now I often accompany Georgia to things because she has some delayed processing. So she will walk away and have questions, and she knows she can rely on me to ask, what's this, and this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's it's the same with customer experience. No one ever calls a contact center to say I'm happy with something. There's always something wrong at the end of the day, or the majority of time.
Yeah, and I think one thing for me when I'm a customer, my people pleasing is something that I really, really struggle with. And so I will often say, yes, that's fine, or that makes sense, or I'm happy to do that when actually inside I'm thinking that's really not comfortable with me. So I think that by kind of having that open conversation to ask those questions is really, really helpful. And a funny story just popped into my mind of a slightly different customer experience, but I went to the Permit Rooms in Cambridge, which is one of Dishoom's restaurants. If you haven't been, it's absolutely great food. But I was slightly early. I was meeting my partner, and as I mentioned before, I don't get out and talk to people much because of being self-employed, but I love to chat. So I just came in, sat down, started chatting to the waitress. I have no idea what we were chatting about, but clearly it was good conversation. Ben comes in, sit down, have dinner, and I just continued chatting to the waitress like she was a friend, because that is how I chat to everybody. And had an amazing meal, and she was receptive for how I was talking to her. So I think one thing I really picked up on was, sometimes if you're in a restaurant, some people might not want to engage with the waiter or waitress any more than what food they want to eat. Some days that's how I am. This day, clearly I wanted to have a chat, but she was very receptive to that, and so she did chat with us. And then it came to the end of the meal, and she came up to me and she was like, oh, I've asked my manager, you've been so lovely and so friendly. We wanted to give you your starter for free and give you a voucher to come back. And I cannot tell you, I mean, I don't care about the free starter or what have you. The fact that my friendliness and the conversation I had had with her had such an impact that it clearly made her day as well as making my day, that she wanted to then give me that voucher. I have been back to that restaurant so many times because of that feel-good feeling I had. And I think for me, the reason I say this, and the reason it's kind of relevant to what we were saying before, is as somebody that's, you know, of a year ago been diagnosed with neurodiversity, there's been so many situations where I felt too much, too keen, kind of, you know, not been comfortable with being myself. And in that moment, I felt, oh my God, they valued me. They've seen me. They've been okay with who I was. And I think that, although sometimes can be tricky, you know, in a customer experience place, if someone's, you know, being a bit out there and wants to chat and stuff, and you're busy and you're rushing, but actually her taking that time to chat with me, that was what was really, really powerful for me. Not the free stuff, that wasn't really what mattered, but it was the recognition of, you know, it was really nice to chat to you, and we're so glad that you've come in this evening, and we'd love to have you back. So I did just want to mention that as well, as aside from the healthcare, because I think just taking that tiny bit more time to have conversations with people and make them feel welcome can completely change the way that somebody experiences your business as well.
Absolutely. And if you think about that again through the sphere of customer experience, that's a restaurant that has empowered their staff to make a bit more time to, so it's not, you're not bussing 20 tables, you're maybe doing 12, and you've got a bit more time so you can engage with the customer a bit more. And yeah, I remember reading Unreasonable Hospitality recently, and one of the things was working out which of the customers are talkers, which ones aren't, which ones do you know, some people, they just want it snappy, get to the point. But yeah, you never know when, and you know, we often ask, does it influence your behaviors? You've been back, so they gave you a voucher and said, come, you know, they gave you something for free and come back again with a voucher. That probably cost them maybe £20, but you've been back again and again and again, and you're now talking about it on a podcast. And I'm thinking, well, I've never been to one of their restaurants, so you know, I'm not far away from Cambridge. That's the kind of thing that. There we go. So you know, that's where customer experience, and it's interesting, having done this now for a few months, it's interesting how many of those customer experiences people talk about are the human experiences. To your point, everything now is virtual. Everything is, if it's not virtual, it's AI driven. It's very transactional, and it's the human experiences that keep shining through more and more with this podcast. And it's the times when people are allowed to be human. So it's probably a nice place to wrap up, actually. So Hannah, where can people find you?
I very regularly post on social media, so Instagram and LinkedIn tend to be the two places I'm on the most. So it's _ we are full of beans on Instagram, and then if you just type Hannah Hickinbotham, if you can spell it, into LinkedIn.
There'll be a QR code coming up, and the podcast is available on all major platforms.
On every single platform, yep. Wherever you want to listen to it, it's there. And also you can go on my website, which is We Are Full of Beans, if you want to have a chat about any of my services.
Awesome. Well, Hannah, thank you very much for joining us on My Favourite Customer Experience.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to My Favourite CX. Your listenership is important to us. On your keypad, please press a number between 1 and 5 to rank how much you've enjoyed your experience.